Welcome to Emotional Support Water Bottle with Hannah and Ailish.
I'm Hannah.
And I'm Ailish. Well, we're back again. I never know how to start our podcast.
I know. Well, we finally got to watch Anora because it is now streaming on Hulu
Yes,
or
thank goodness.
Disney.
Thank goodness. I was so excited.
Sorry, my whole face just blew up in front of me. Anyway. Yeah, okay, so what were your just like overall thoughts on it?
Well, I enjoyed it. I definitely I don't know, I can see why it was a popular movie, like why people
Mhm.
liked it. But now that I've seen it, it certainly is a bit more surprising that it did win like best picture and all these things. Like it was good, but then
Mhm.
once you saw it, you're kind of like when you try to compare it to other movies, it's just so different.
I know it was very different. I liked it, but I wasn't in love with it. Which that doesn't mean it can't win an Oscar because there were
Mhm.
a lot of, like, really cool elements to it. But I gotta say, though, because I feel like sometimes when you go into these movies and you don't know a ton I knew it was about a sex worker, but I didn't know a ton about what happens in the movie that I sort of like the humor, I didn't catch on to it right away, like, in the beginning or, like, the first third, I guess, but right to the part where those guys come in and are, like, tackling her, I was, missing a lot of the humor for a second because I didn't know if they were gonna hurt her, if they were like, what was gonna happen with that, and it kinda took a minute for me to be like, "Oh, okay, they're not gonna hurt her. They're all gonna try to, like, go find this little turd that screwed them all over," and then I was started to, like, catch on to that a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. Through that part, like kind of when that was really when things shifted. And I didn't really know what the heck was going on either. Like it definitely seemed like it was going to take a dark turn,
It
but then
did, and
it
that
didn't.
oh, sorry. That period where they just come in like that, I mean, that was kind of a long scene
It
too, and I'm
was
like and they're tackling her and, like, throwing her around, and
tying
I
her
just
up.
wasn't catching the humor of it in that moment.
Yeah, I think when they it was finally the part where the Igor character had tied her up with the phone cord and then the other guy was like, "What are you doing?" Like that
Right,
was where I was like, "Oh, okay, like they're not gonna kill her."
right,
It's like because I
but it
really
felt
didn't
like that.
know. Like I truly didn't know.
No. I had no idea where that part was gonna go or what they were gonna do with it, and then it was, like, the more you saw I think his name is Toros?
Yeah.
The more you started catching on or, like, seeing him, you're like, "Oh, this is kinda like a funny, over the top character," and you actually start to kinda like him and, like, this group of people that she's being are, like, following around trying to get this guy, and it's, like, this long night of just them trying to find this guy. I had no idea the movie was gonna go like that. I didn't even think they were gonna find him.
Me either.
Like, it just I had no idea what we were gonna do with all that.
Well, and that was kind of the whole like middle like act 2, I guess as they say,
Mhm.
was literally that whole search for
Yvonne
Yvonne.
or
Yeah.
I
Like
know, and, she was or Mikey Madison was obviously very mesmerizing. Like,
yeah.
even the twinkle in her or tinsel in her hair.
And
I
the
actually
twinkle
really
in her eye.
the twinkle of her I just really liked that they did that because it really made her, like, stand out, and I almost felt like the euphoria thing where they have this kinda, like over the top makeup and stuff that like, you almost wondered if she actually had tinsel in her hair or if that's just the way, like, we're viewing her as this star and, like, the way she views herself.
Well, and I liked how none of the other strippers had
Mhm.
any tinsel that we could see.
I know, and then I noticed too that because I was trying to look at it because she has, like, the dark hair, I'm like, "Is that red tinsel to go with the red sheets and the red
Mhm.
scarf?" And I just feel like there's, like, this red theme happening.
Yeah, I agree. I also saw when I had mentioned like a couple weeks ago when I watched that interview where they were breaking down a scene with her and Sean Baker and or no, maybe it wasn't that one. It might have been a different one. It doesn't matter. It was some interview, and she was talking about kind of some of the details. And the one was how they put those bow tattoos on the back of her thigh because I guess a lot of strippers or sex workers have those because it's like just kind of alluring and like obviously when they're doing their stuff it draws the eye to the goods, but I thought it was interesting that they'd made that choice, but I didn't even notice them in the movie that often.
No, I agree. I wouldn't have noticed it. I feel like if I watched this a second time, I would pick up on a lot more
Mhm.
just things they chose to do with the character and just different stuff like that. But in the first time watching this, I just a lot of that stuff I feel like was just totally lost on me because I had
Yeah.
no idea where we were going with it.
Yeah, me too. And I guess it just shows how they made a really well-rounded character too, because
Hmm.
like they totally thought through like, what kind of person is she? She has
Hmm.
tinsel in her hair. She has these tattoos and they're for a reason. And what kind of clothes? Like those are the kind of details that really make a character just have more depth.
I know, and I find it interesting that a lot of the criticism that I've seen is that people don't find her to be this like we don't get like a ton of her backstory or anything. But I feel like I didn't really need it in a way
I agree. Like that,
because it's
it's
like I
kind
know where
of
she. Oh, sorry.
well. No, it's fine. That's just what we it's like what we were talking about with Baby Girl. Like for some movies and for some characters, I don't think I need a whole, montage of their past. Like we
Right.
can kind of with Anora, I felt like it was really easy to put the puzzle pieces together and you can understand obviously her life was that of struggle. We heard that her parents live in Florida. She lives with her
Mhm.
sister. Like what more do we really need to know? She wanted to escape the life that she had been living.
Right. And it's like she was young. It wasn't like she was this 42-year-old woman where you're like, oh, maybe I would have liked to know how we've gotten here. But it's like she graduated high school and then she needed a hustle to take care of herself. And I feel like that was plenty for me. So I just think it was interesting. I that people are making those criticisms, especially when we got to the end. And people are like, okay, but what exactly was fully upsetting her? But I feel like it was clear that it was all of it was
Yeah, like
upsetting her.
what do you mean? It's pretty
I know
obvious.
it's like I know. That's why I was just a little surprised when I was hearing people say that. Like I kind of understood what they were saying, but I do think sometimes when you're in like this movie world, you just have to like take it for what it is. Cause one of my things that I thought I don't want to say I like rolled my eyes at, but was with the Igor character, the way he was just like being nice to her and seeing her as a person. And because I didn't know where they were gonna go with that either. But I'm like, so like whatever towards what was I gonna say? Just I was like, oh, that's so kind of cliche that oh my gosh, she just like likes her for who she is. But then if we're just taking this in the movie world, it's like a small cast. There is gonna be somebody at some point that is going to be nice to her and see past all that stuff of, like, trying to use her,
Yeah, like, we
and it's
know
just represented through him.
there has to be a sympathetic, person
Right.
to the main character for sure.
Right. It's like, even if that isn't super, like, believable, I guess, for me personally, I'm like, but it works in the movie world, and I think sometimes people just get a little too, like, into why all that's happening. It's like, well, because we need that to happen to progress the story.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I mean, that's what it is, right? And I
right.
also think too, with all that they experienced in such a short period of time, like there were so many emotions involved in this
Mhm.
insane, insane situation that like even in real life, like sometimes when you're feeling all these emotions, they almost kind of get displaced on a person.
Mhm.
And like while I agree, it was kind of like, okay, typical, like, are they gonna fall in love now? That's where
Right.
I was thinking toward the end. But at the same time, I guess it is kind of realistic that, I mean, we see this all the time where in movies, I guess, where the two characters who just went through this insane thing that only they have experienced end up, in a little, just all this emotion rushes and they come together. So, but I did like at the end, spoilers, sorry if anybody hasn't seen it, too late now. It's been out for a while, but um, where she, like, I thought I loved where he gave her the ring. I thought that was just sweet. Like I liked
Mhm.
that. And then where she kind of like at first, I'm gonna get a little graphic for people who maybe don't want to hear about, intimate moments, but and she like goes to have sex with him in the car because that's like what she knows,
Right.
that's her profession. But then she ended up like having all these emotions of like when he tried to kiss her, like the whole time. I don't even know. Did we see her and Yvonne slash Vanya kiss the whole time? Besides
I
when
would
they got married?
I was thinking that too. We do see them kiss, but not when they're being intimate.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So she's like completely repelling away from
Right.
that.
Which, and that's like the thing too with like sex workers sometimes too. That's what we hear, is that it's like no kissing, that's like
Yeah,
too intimate. That's not what this is. So it was interesting when he's trying to be like romantic and sweet to her, and then she just is overcome with all the emotions of everything.
yeah,
And I also feel like with his character too, he was seeing her, because he just kind of got thrown into it. He's not just seeing her as like this annoying issue, and he can actually relate to her a little bit because he lives with his grandma. He, has like a crappy car
hmm,
and stuff. And I feel like he's just sympathetic for her. It's like, oh, like he could see it right away that she was being used by this little loser, rich,
yeah.
spoiled brat.
Well, and because he's kind of being used by them too, because
Yeah.
they're like, we needed you for this. Okay, well, you
Hmm.
can leave too. Like they were very dismissive of him. And I mean, not that we need to go deep into his character, but like, we don't even know what he got out of this whole thing. Like,
Right.
like they never said
Right.
anything about him getting paid or anything like that.
Right. And then he, yeah, doesn't, sorry, take advantage of her. And then too, he's like attracted to her, like interested in her, and she's completely clothed and cold and in a huge jacket too. And he like sees her for her instead of just a body.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I liked it. I wasn't expecting it to end in that way. And even like
No.
I thought it was really just powerful with how it ended with her. just breaking down and crying, and he's holding her, and then the credits just run, but
I
you
know, no music.
no, you just hear the car running and the windshield wipers going. I was like,
Yeah.
"Whoa," like, I just
Oh,
sat in that for a minute.
I know, I was like, well, yeah, because it was so abrupt and I was not expecting it to happen and I didn't know because almost in that car and like the way it was shot was so intimate too. And you're
Mhm.
like, oh, well, this, like, even when they were like alone in the house together, you kind of thought, I'm like, oh, something might happen. And then it didn't. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And then when he hands her that ring, and then she's like, "Okay, I guess we have to do this." And then
Yeah.
it was like but he wasn't even expecting that from
No,
her in that moment.
and I thought too, like, throughout her relationship with Yvonne, I thought that she was, like, when they were being intimate, acting very, like, performative in some ways
Mhm,
still, because she was getting paid for this, even though then they got married, but all the
mhm,
scenes that we saw, it was very, like, over the top, but then in this final scene with Igor, like, it really seemed like she was actually enjoying that
mhm.
more than she had with any of the other times we saw on camera. And I thought that was just really like, wow, like we just watched this whole movie of them having sex. And then this last one is the one that like hits her.
I know, and even again, not to be uncomfortable or graphic, but it's like a lot of the times that we saw her with Yvonne, she was like turned around.
Yeah,
And then this was very like face to face,
very
quiet,
sexual.
just yeah. Now, do you think that any of it was too gratuitous, or did you think it was fine? Because I kind of went back and forth with it.
I mean, I had heard from like multiple podcasts of them saying, like, oh my God, the whole first 45 minutes, that's all it was sex. And then when I saw it, I was actually like, I really didn't think it was that gratuitous because I thought that exact same thing when it was finished. And I really thought that it told us what their relationship was. Like, even
Yeah.
when he was like, I want to marry you, like, no, let's do it. It was like we were still seeing them be intimate in a very not intimate way
Yeah, like
almost.
very impersonable.
Yeah.
Impersonal.
Yeah, and very just like, I did pay for you, like you're mine. Like that's the
Mhm,
way it felt still. And so I did think that like thinking back on the movie now, the way they kept adding that in there, it was really setting us up for he does not have her back. He doesn't care about her.
mhm.
He's
He
gonna just
just
throw her
used
away.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, I know, that's how I felt too. Because even when, like, the first opening scene, I was like, "Oh, here we go."
Hmm.
But I agree, but I also thought that was really fun too,
All the
like, just
strip
kinda
club
seeing
stuff.
her yeah, and just kinda like this thing we don't really and of course this is a movie, but we don't really always get, like, a peek into that very much, and it was just kinda, like, fun to see, like but obviously there's a lot of dark things that happen
Totally.
working in sex work, so I guess there is kinda like a weird, like thing to do when you're doing it in a movie because you are making it glamorous, but then not. And then it almost seemed too that they were trying to, I don't want to say normalize it, but like show, like, hey, these are like good women who are just fine, just trying to make it. But then towards the end, you kind of get this feeling like, with all these emotions hitting her, that you almost see that she's like, oh my gosh, even though she's getting the money from the ring or whatever she decides to do with the ring, that she might have to go back to that
Yeah.
life and she thought she was getting out of it. So it almost kind of had like a mixed message there.
Yeah, I agree. Like she was so happy to be leaving it all
I know. It was like
behind.
Yeah, it was almost like she thought it was never gonna happen, but then
Mhm.
it did, and it's like, even when she was, like, saying goodbye to everybody, it almost seemed like this had happened to another girl or
Yeah,
something, she got to, like, it's like, "Now it's my turn,
I
bye,"
know.
and it's interesting too because the guy that offered her this was her age,
Mhm.
so it almost felt like, "This isn't creepy, this is cool, he, like, genuinely loves me, I'm just gonna roll with it," and then to
Yeah,
find out he's just as terrible.
yeah,
It's
like,
just her age.
it felt like a romantic whirlwind, and then you
Yeah,
realize, "Oh, no, he's just as scummy as the other ones."
yeah, and just being a spoiled, privileged brat, and that this
Mhm.
is just the norm for him, and I just thought it was cool too how you could just see, like, when he was all drunk and they finally get him back and her desperation to, like,
Yeah,
"Look at me. Tell them you love me. Tell them you don't want to have this happen." What do you
yeah.
think about her kinda like, I don't know, like, folding quick when the mom, like, threatened her?
Well, at first, when she said, "No, I'm getting a divorce and I'm gonna take half," and I was like, "Yes, that's what
You
I want.
better.
You better do that." But then, when I think this is the moment where it kind of all came to reality for Anora was when the
Mhm.
mom was like whispering in her ear and saying, everything you have, which I know is not much, will be gone and everyone's life around you will be destroyed. I think that's when she realized, like, these people are really powerful. Like, I
Yeah,
don't stand a chance. And this isn't
right,
going to
and
work out for me.
they just get what they want all the time, and
Yeah.
I'm just a small, insignificant person in their big scheme, and I was used and stuff.
Hmm.
I know, because you almost wanted her character to be, like, that tough as nails person that she was and just to actually try to fight them, but then the reality is that that just wouldn't work, and I like
Well,
that they had that as it.
me too. But we also saw before that, which it's funny because when, I guess the band of idiots that came to try and get them to the courthouse or whatever, I was like, they have to go to Vegas to get this annulled. They can't
I
do it in
know
the
that
state of
was
New York. Like, in my head, I was like, this isn't gonna work out.
won't work.
But she
I know.
did try there, she was, like, trying to appeal to the judge, like, "Listen
Mhm.
to me, he's not competent right now, like, look at my husband, they're trying to break us up, he can't speak for himself, like, you have to listen to me, and then, like, our marriage is real." So I feel like she had that fight in her, and then once time just kept going and it just kept slipping further and further out of her hands. I feel like once the parents got there, and especially when the mom first came off the plane and basically dismissed her immediately, that was where
Mhm.
she was like, I I'm not gonna win here. Like, I have nothing, like, they don't care about me at all.
I know, and it also seemed too that she cared enough about herself too to be like, "Why do I even wanna be around this person? Even if
Yeah,
there is all this money, I'll be miserable and unloved."
yeah, like, it's not worth it.
Mhm.
And I loved when they finally got the annulment and then she's, you know, given like an FU basically. And she's like, and you can have your jacket, and like takes that fur coat off and throws it at him.
Mhm.
And then just to show how, like, final reason of how he's such a spoiled, privileged brat, he just like throws the jacket at
Yeah,
the
it's like,
lady
"Here,
who
you can
did
have
the,
that." Yeah.
yeah, he's like a gift for you. Like, wow. And that was
It
the
was
last
the
time we saw him on
Mhm.
camera. And what did you think too? Because when it was going through awards season, I didn't understand why the Igor character got the supporting best supporting actor and not the Yvonne character. But after watching it, like I did understand, and I wanted to like hear your thoughts on that too.
I know I was surprised too because it just I guess maybe that would have been the obvious thing was to like have him because he was like the other star. But I also felt like it was fine because it was almost like he didn't have a lot of depth to him, but I don't know, but it is kind of weird though because it really goes either way sometimes.
I know. I felt like for me what it came down to was that like Igor's character was more impactful. Like
Yeah.
what he did on screen, even though he didn't really have like a ton of lines even,
No.
but just his presence I think was more impactful than, like this spoiled 21-year-old who was on a
Right.
bender.
Right. Right. Yeah, because even just like his looks, like when he would look at her, like
Yeah,
or even just like walking behind her, just a lot of like body language that I thought was really, really good.
yeah, me too. I mean, I I think it was definitely deserving of a nomination, but I can see why he didn't win in that category, especially
Mm-hmm.
when, he was up against some heavy hitters. And I think that Kieran Culkin was a great choice because we both loved him in A Real Pain. But yeah, I mean, I it just made sense after seeing the movie. I was like, oh, that's why he was nominated and not the other person that you would obviously think it to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall like I really liked it. It definitely is not a movie I would be watching with the family, that's for sure.
I went to, yeah, warning.
Yeah.
No,
But I would watch it again.
I know I liked it. I want to see like things I didn't pick up on. I feel like I'll remember this as one of those like fun movies.
Mhm. And
I
this
guess my last thoughts on it are is that there were times where I'm like, this was definitely a woman written by a man, but I'm glad to see that she had a lot of input into the character too.
yeah,
So
because she did. And the other thing I loved that, speaking of like the input, how they did get the input and the background from real sex workers, and then they were
yeah.
in the movie too. I mean, that made it so much more real. Like
Hmm.
I believed that I believed that whole club that they were at. Like headquarters could have been a real place, like they
Yeah.
made it feel so just in reality. And then to know that, like, I'm guessing that a lot of the girls in the club scenes or in the strip club scenes were actual sex workers, but I know that like the red-haired girl was, and then I think the girl that played her friend, they both
Hmm.
were the ones that were at the Oscars, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, and they did good, and I liked kind of that, specifically with that redheaded girl, just like that competition and just wanting to be the best, or like I want to have the billionaire or the millionaire boyfriend that comes in and
Mhm.
sweeps me away. It's like that cutthroatness to it that women have in general with each
Yeah,
other. And then I can't even imagine in that situation how intense. I'm sure there's like a sisterhood there too, but when you
but
have that type of
also
situation,
yeah, there's that tension too because at the end of the day, everybody's trying to make money.
right?
So,
Like that part where she's like, did you just go back there with Robert or
yeah,
whatever? Like, you better not have. And she's like, you did.
yeah, yeah, it's just like, there yeah, maybe it's with some people, maybe it's like more of a friendly competition, but with others, it's definitely, no, we're really like we don't like each other, even
Mhm.
though, we're in this very intimate profession, we still can feud.
I know. Yeah, it is. I do, and this sounds probably terrible, but I am very fascinated with like sex workers and stuff too, because it just feels so distant from my life.
I know.
And just like it's not for the weak of heart, obviously, or even with that stuff with like Bonnie Blue and all that kind of controversy, it's such a fascinating.
It is. And I liked how, I don't know, like I saw something where people were talking about, just bringing like sex work to kind of the forefront and stuff. And they made a comment about Sean Baker about like, oh, he's already made so many movies about
Right.
this same, which I haven't seen all of his films. So like I didn't see Tangerine or
No, the only one I saw was Florida Project and
yeah.
Red Rocket, I think.
Yeah, I didn't see that one either. So many people were like, it's, like this
So
is
weird.
he really knows this at this point. But
I
I
guess
still just don't think it's something that we we necessarily have a great understanding of. And it's like
right,
I while this movie did kind of glamorize things at times, like it did still show kind of that like dark underbelly, or and even just like how it's just difficult. I mean, when
right,
she
or it's
was
not all this big fantasy thing.
yeah, I mean, when she first wants to go with Vanya for the week, and she goes to tell the scheduler or whatever, and then they go to the head guy, and they're like, "What, a week? We just gave you New Year's," and she says, "Well, when you start paying me, good
Right,
insurance and workers' comp, then you can tell me when I'm going to work or not." It's like, yeah, a lot of these girls probably don't have benefits like that. Like they literally are getting cash in hand.
right.
That's not easy.
No, not at all. It's just a wild life. And I
Yeah.
do feel like too, like speaking on like the other movies, like I said, I've only seen the Florida Project. That's a totally, I feel, just completely different story than this, even though it's dealing with the same type of profession as a person.
Mhm.
And I just think there is a lot of different ways we can tell these stories. Some are, even more sad than others. And like this one kind of had like a lot more humor in it as a movie, but I don't know. I feel like it's just so interesting and how judged those women can be,
Mhm.
specifically the women, but it's
Yeah.
fascinating.
I liked it overall. Like I think it was deserving of its win just because it was something fresh and new too. Like we haven't I don't know, like you just don't the whole movie overall, it just had a fresh feeling to it. And there were so many different layers like put throughout it, I think. And it just made it, I don't know, unique. And I think that's why it was something that people really stuck to. But obviously the, three times the budget spent on marketing did its job as well. So
I know, and and it was nice just to see some, even though Mikey Madison's obviously been in like Scream
some
and stuff. It was
stuff.
just kind of nice to see some fresh faces on screen too.
Mhm. Mhm. Cuz yeah, it's gets a little boring to see the same people all the time.
Mhm.
Speaking of movies just involving like sex work and kind of glamorizing it, I can't remember. Did you see that movie Zola with Riley Keough?
No,
Okay. That came out like around COVID time, and I don't even know what it was on, but I who knows, I was probably paying for things left, right, and center, just dying for new content during those months, years. But it was kind of a similar situation where like these girls are strippers and they Riley Keough's character gets this tip that they can go down and kind of do these shows and more like private things down in Florida, and they can make all this money, but then things just turn bad because you know obviously like you're down in Florida, there's a lot of money, shady people involved, and drugs, and things just take a horrible turn. And that movie too, like, these girls are pretty, they're at this club, they're like, I can go down here for a couple weeks and make enough money to that I make at the club in a year, and like why would we not do this? And at first it is really glamorized and stuff, and then things start going wrong and you're just like, I bet this really happens to some people, you know?
I know, I remember one time I saw this TikTok, and I remember it, like, shook me up a little bit, but it was, like, a stripper, and she was showing this person's locker, and they had, like, a little tribute to her there, and she goes, "We lost another one,"
Oh
and
my
it's like
god.
people just almost don't care about what happens to these women, and it seems like we're talking about them more in a more, like, positive way now, but I mean, even that was just I don't know, maybe that was during COVID too, when I saw that, it was just like, wow, and then you're reading the comments of people, like, talking about these, like, tragic stories that nobody ever hears about, and it's scary, and even when you hear people talk about, like, if you're not a celebrity and you get on OnlyFans and they start to talk about, like, how actually that's really hard if you don't
Mhm.
have a following, and just then there's the stalkers, and then it's like you keep getting asked to do weirder and weirder things, and it's like, where do you draw the line?
Yeah.
And
And then, you're like, well, this person is offering this much and I only have to do it one time. But
right.
then that's always spirals, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you're you're way deeper in than you ever intended on being.
I know, it's like when something's too good to be true, it
It is.
usually is.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely would say people should give this one a watch. Check out
Yeah,
Anora. Thank goodness it's finally finally available. I think that would have been um speaking particularly of the ending though, I think in the theaters the whole movie would have been impactful because like those club scenes and just when they're like going here and there and looking for um Vanya, like that would have been really, I don't know, just bigger and like more dramatic. But I think the ending in a theater, that would have just hit so hard.
I know. It would have been insane,
Yeah.
especially just thinking about if you got to see it in the festival. I'm like one of the first people to see it and having no
Yes.
idea. But I hadn't even heard anything about that ending, but I was kind of like avoiding stuff anyway. But I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I hadn't heard anything about the ending either, but same thing. I wasn't looking stuff up. But yeah, well, to shift gears, speaking of new releases, we
Oh
also
my.
watched one of the biggest Netflix movies of the year thus far,
Yes.
The Electric State.
Wow. Okay, so when I first clicked on it, I saw PG-13. I was like, okay, that could have been PG. I thought I had to double check. I'm like, is this a kids movie?
Yeah,
Why on earth was this a PG-13? They could have took out a little bit of the violence. Of there was hardly any swear words, took those out, and that would have been and cut like 45 minutes.
yeah,
That could have been a kids movie. I felt totally comfortable having that on in front of my kids.
yeah. I was thinking that exact same thing. I mean, just in general, this movie really lost me basically from the beginning. And
I
I
know.
definitely was dozing in and out for those
I know.
over 2 hours. But I was thinking that same thing when because I was before we hopped on, I was just trying to watch a little bit more to refresh my memory. And I'm like, this would be fine for a kid. Like I could
Yeah.
see a kid enjoying this.
Yeah, like, what was the point of making it that PG-13? Especially because, like, even the weapons, I was like, "Okay, maybe I don't want him to see guns," but then it ended up being, like, robots
Yeah.
that aren't even, like, real anyway.
I feel like they just were trying to pull in the older audience to try and make it
Yeah,
a
and, like,
bigger hit.
intrigue them.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
it from the beginning, I mean, I guess the premise of the movie, I don't mind, like the idea of the technology and robots and everything like that, and the way
like, being
people,
amongst us, and
yeah,
there's, like, a war.
right, and how people can kind of like dissociate and
Right.
be in a different, like, I like that idea, but
Yeah,
I
that
just
part was cool in the movie just to, like, have them walk past that older couple who are just, like, laying there, like,
zombied
somewhere else.
out. Yeah, but the execution, I think, was just very poor. Like, for an adult watching it, I didn't think that the writing was good. It
It was
really,
so Oh, sorry. It was so low stakes
right.
in a way that a kid movie is.
Yeah,
Like, "Oh, no, I've gotta say." I do think, like, the brother being in the robot was, like, so heartbreaking. I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me? They're gonna put the freaking brother in the robot." I
I know,
can't even.
I
But
know.
it was just so low stakes, and then the peanut robot
Yeah,
was just
like, where did Mr. Peanut come from? That was bizarre.
I know, I'm like, "Why?"
And then,
And then it was like
you know who voices that? Woody
Ah,
Harrelson.
I know, and then that one robot was Jenny Slate. I'm like, "Is that freaking Jenny Slate?" Like, voice acting cast was stacked.
Well, that's why the movie cost $300 million.
I know, because let me tell you, I did not see that budget anywhere, and I read a comment that there was some AI.
Mm, mm, mm.
Tisk tisk.
Tisk, tisk. No, it lost me. Like, literally, from, I would say, the first 20, not even 20 minutes. I'd say the first opening scenes, I'm like, okay, so this is how it's gonna go. Like, nothing, the writing was just so like phoned in that nothing
Mhm.
felt genuine or natural in their acting these roles out. Like, it just felt so like we're reading these lines and that's it. Like, I didn't feel like Millie Bobby Brown even had like any type of real connection to anybody that she was interacting with. I didn't feel it from Chris Pratt. Like, I just felt like they were there to get checks.
Literally, I don't know why they didn't just hire some younger guy and then had it be like a romance. At least there's
Mhm.
something I can care about, or like have her have chemistry with some I don't even know, young actor guy, and then I would be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, these 2 young actors are in here." But I will say that it did prove to me that Millie Bobby Brown does look better with dark hair.
Oh, 100%.
I'm like, "This is the perfect example." I'm
Yeah.
watching it back and forth, and I know they were trying to make her look younger with, like, the brown hair, and then the blonde, I'm assuming, was to make her look then older, but
Yeah. No. I honestly, I didn't even understand, why was this set in the 90s?
I didn't get that either. Why wouldn't you have done, like, a futuristic thing where we have gotten to the point where we are at war with these robots, and now
Yeah.
we're getting past that, and I didn't get that either. It made no sense.
This is one
And
of the things where I felt like the time period that it was in was almost a bit more distracting. Like, I thought her styling in these like 90s clothes that didn't really fit her, to me, like fit the vibe, that didn't make any sense. And it was just kind of distracting to me. And like, I get the blonde hair was almost to like an act of rebellion because, she's had these tragedies, and but there were also just so many things too. Like, she became a ward of the state and they awarded her to a single middle-aged man.
I know who's in robot land all the time.
That
Just seems very
doesn't make any
unhealthy.
sense.
No. I know, just all of it was just so not good, and even not to, like, nitpick, but their interactions with the robots were just so bad, like,
Yeah.
you could just it just felt so disjointed, and then even when
Mhm.
that part where that the person that's she's been granted custody to, when they're like when he goes in there, he's like, "Both of you are
Yeah,
getting out of here," and then, like, the robot fights him off, and it's so just bad. That's
I
when I
know.
was like, "Is this a kids movie?" No, it's still PG-13. I just was like, it just
No, I didn't like, Stanley Tucci. He was
no.
he was trying to be like a Tim Cook, Steve Jobs character, like, that felt kind of odd.
I know, and then just, like, that was odd, and the way the robots were, where they were looked like from the '90s, but
Yeah.
cartoons, it just was like, I don't know if we've gotten to this point where robots can take over the human race. It just seems like they're gonna be a little better than
Yeah, I
that.
would think they would look a bit more lifelike. But that's
Yeah,
what also made it feel like it was a kids
kids
movie.
movie because they weren't scary. They
No.
weren't they were made out of, like, microwaves, like, I don't know, it just was not
Like, and I think that if like, it didn't even have to be set in the 90s. It could have almost just been one of those things where it's, 2055 or whatever, but we've created these robots to bring nostalgia back. Where
right,
and that could have been kind of cool, or it could have been like, those were the good robots, and then there's these super human like
high tech,
robots that were
right.
the ones that are super smart and whatever and taking over. Like, there just could have been so many other ways to execute this movie where I actually think it could have been decent, where this was
Yeah.
just such a typical Netflix, let's throw every major, actor that we can get into this for no reason at all and try to get hype going so we can get a bunch of streams.
I know because I would have accepted this as a decent kids movie.
Hmm.
Like I would have been like, "Oh, okay, this is a kids movie. It's okay." It's like it's
Yeah.
enough to get you there. And like with the robots too, and maybe we even like missed that, but I get that these robots seem like they were supposed to be like a rebel thing and maybe they almost like put themselves together, but it was just very unclear.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that either. Like, it was
I know
unclear.
why these ones were, like, so low grade
But then there were other ones that were
or,
clearly,
like, nicer.
yeah, I didn't get that. So I would not recommend that movie at all. I mean, unless it
No, I
was
think
for
it's still
a
number
kid.
1 right now.
Oh yeah, of course it is. They're gonna say that, like,
Like, of
it has
course,
the most
duh.
revenue and streams. This is, I mean, we've
Yeah,
talked about this before. I still just don't understand. So how is this movie recouping the $300 million? Does Netflix
right.
not care about that? Like, how, I truly don't get it.
I know, and even on The Town when that one woman was on there and she's like, "Well, this is our budget for content this year," and it was, like, huge, but it seemed
Mhm.
like this was a huge. I guess this would probably count for last year's budget maybe.
Yeah.
But it just seems like, yeah, like, I doubt a bunch of people went ahead and got new subscriptions to Netflix because they saw this movie was gonna be on there.
Yeah, like, no
It's
way.
like, how does that benefit you? And if they're that rich, then I wanna see some actual good content. If you can give 300 million to this, let me see why like, I would have rather have had, like, I don't even know. You could have spent, like 60 mil or something on a couple of movies and they would have still been good.
Well, this is what we've said before too, with like Apple does it, Netflix does it, with just spending so much of their budget on salaries of their
Mhm.
actors, where honestly you could spend less on lesser known people and probably have a better movie on like in raw reality, because then you would be able to put more money into things that really matter for the quality, where
Mhm.
I just feel like, and this isn't like a dig on Millie Bobby Brown or Chris Pratt, but they added nothing to this film. They could have been
No,
anybody.
literally, especially with the dry dialogue and the no chemistry. It
Mhm.
just yeah, I just totally don't get that in it. But the thing is, when they kept like, because I've heard about this a lot because of the budget, and it's like getting that big budget number out there is probably what's drawing everybody in. Like, we're gonna see this big, cool, epic
Mhm.
movie. It's like, so it kind of like worked still,
Yeah,
but I
because they
still
weren't
don't
shy
understand.
about saying how much they spent.
It's like, this is what we spent. This is how good it is. Blah blah blah. It just seems like that's what got me to watch it, was just hearing about it and hearing that budget and having to see for myself. But I'm already subscribed to Netflix, so it's like
Same. So they didn't, if I wasn't, I don't think this would have gotten me to
right.
subscribe.
Or like what would happen if if people weren't watching it? It's like, well, it doesn't matter. Everybody got paid and
Yeah.
everything's fine.
Well, and I just, I don't know if it's right or wrong to be a skeptic, but I just have a hard time believing some of the numbers that they post too. It's like, of course, you're going to say that this big blockbuster that you've been promoting for the past month on a press tour did, the best so far and had all these people watch it in the first 2 days or whatever. It's like, I just don't believe that. Like, that's what they said for that other Millie Bobby Brown movie too. What was that, like Damsel or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know one person that watched that movie.
Right.
And
Right.
you're gonna
I
tell
guess I
me
don't
that,
know 14-year-old girls. Like,
right,
I
and
can't
then,
imagine who else would want to watch it.
yeah, but I guess you're right. But like, they're trying to report that, they have millions and millions of streams. It's like, from who? Like, how? That
Right.
doesn't even make sense.
Show me this data.
Yes, show me the data and show me who watched the movie in at length. Like, who didn't turn it off? Who didn't just watch the first, few minutes or whatever? Like, that's what I want to see too.
I know, I like when the town brings that up. It's like, yeah, a bunch of
Uh-huh.
people turned it on, but what's your retention? And that lady was like, we have very good retention.
Yeah,
I
like,
was like, I don't
oh,
know.
don't
Or like
bring
how many,
that up.
right? Or like how many even of the documentaries that are like 3 parts or something that you start and then don't get back to until like three
Mhm.
months later? It's like, what does that count for?
Yep. Right now, it is the second most searched just on Google action movie. But do you wanna guess what its rating is on Rotten Tomatoes?
Gosh, 13.
You're really close, 15.
Dang.
I think
It was
that's
terrible on
accurate.
Letterbox too.
Yeah, I think it's accurate. Oh my god. Okay, well, this makes sense. Voice from Kids First Film Festival. The acting is superb. I connected with all of the characters and even got a bit emotional at the end. Kids First. It's a kids movie.
I know they should have, like I said, they should have took out a little less violence or like more over the top silly violence and took out what she say, the D word.
Yeah, and
And
then
then they said
just,
one other thing.
yeah, no, just,
Perfectly fine as a kids movie. And I actually think that could have made it better because you could have made it a little sillier and a little more heartwarming versus whatever
mhm,
the heck this was.
yeah. Well, yeah. And then we've got like articles. how to make an instantly forgettable, very expensive movie about the electric state, despite topping streaming charts, looks like a massive flop for Netflix. Like, it's just not
What?
good.
I know, which is just strange, but then it's like at the end of the day, it's not like people are gonna cancel their Netflix
No.
thing just because this movie came out. So it's like they still just
What did
got
they
to do what they
lose?
want. Yeah, they
Yeah,
lost nothing
yeah,
and got people talking.
yeah. So, I mean, whatever. I mean, this is when I was like in and out of sleep watching it last night, like I went through it fully and then I started it again. So they've already gotten like 1.5 plays from me, although I wasn't conscious for most of it.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's all about the numbers.
Yeah. Speaking of just new movies that come out, I didn't watch this yet, and I don't plan on doing so. But I've just heard so much about that new movie, Black Bag.
Yeah,
With
I seen it was playing at the theater up by me.
yeah, with I mean that has a pretty stacked cast too, with Kate
Mm.
Blanchett and Michael Fassbender, and then that what's his name, Regé Jean Page from Bridgerton. I Is this the first thing that he's done since leaving Bridgerton because he needed to work on other projects?
Yeah, as far as I know, it is.
I mean, come on, man. That was a
Like,
strange
all right.
choice to make. But um I just heard like from on the big picture, they've mentioned it multiple times about how good this movie was. And I don't know if it's just that I have a different taste in movies than them, but even when I like saw the little clip on Netflix of this one, I was like, disinterested. Like I don't care about this movie.
Yeah, I've heard a couple different people, they're like, "Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie." Sometimes because even when, like, Anora was coming out and it kept kinda getting shoved in our face, sometimes I just have to, like, and, like, obviously, we ended up liking Anora, but I just have to side eye some of that, like, it just feels like they're pushing it just feels like there's some kind of a incentive for them to be like, "Yeah, this is a good movie, you guys should check it
Well,
out."
that's how I felt exactly. Like, are they being sponsored to say
No.
this?
Or, like and, like, The Wild Robot, it's like, I'm sure that's a really good movie, but that one kept getting, like where you're,
Pushed
like,
a lot.
having ads,
Mhm.
reads of these movies, and I'm like, "What is that?" Like, I've just never
Yeah, it's,
come across that until, the past
recently.
6 months,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just didn't I don't know, this the premise of this movie just didn't resonate with me. And I do like some action thrillers. Like I think that
Yeah.
those can be fun to watch. And I'm sure like Kate Blanchett and Michael Fassbender are good actors. So like I'm sure that they're good in it. But it's not enough to draw me in. Like I don't really care. I mean that might be one that maybe when it comes on streaming I would take a look at, but I
Mm.
certainly wasn't going to go to theaters for it.
Right, I'm intrigued, but I don't know yeah, it's like one of those things, I don't know if that's gonna get me into the theater unless I'm, like, looking for something in a specific weekend. But again, we've talked about this before, it's like it's probably gonna hardly be in the theater, and then you're just not gonna see it until it's on streaming.
Speaking of that, I think that they said, oh my god, what movie was it about? It might have been Mickey 17 or I can't remember, a movie that came out recently. The turnaround for theaters to streaming was going to be 6 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was Mickey 17.
That's
It's just
ridiculous.
it is, and it's like, what's the point? I'll
Yeah,
just
like,
wait,
I
unless
mean,
I need to see it that weekend.
Yeah, and I didn't have anything to do that Saturday when I went and watched it. Like, I don't regret going to see it, especially I saw it on a matinee. I basically got a private showing. I mean, it was all pros for me. But if I would have known that it was going to be out on streaming that quickly, I might have made a different choice, you know?
Right. Yeah, because they're not going to advertise that.
Yeah.
Or I think was it Wicked too that they were talking about came out 6 weeks later, like right on New Year's
Yeah.
Day, and they're like right when everyone was going to be home.
But then it stayed in theaters for longer. That
And
was the
so
one
yeah,
that
and I
was
think
a
you had to
little.
pay for it on streaming too, but you still had
Yeah.
access to it.
Yeah. Yep.
I know.
I know. It's just
What are we
crazy.
doing here?
I know. I know. I also was thinking something a little fun for us to do, maybe for a future episode, because I just saw that movie Trap from M. Night Shyamalan came on Netflix.
I know. I want to watch it.
Me too. And I thought that maybe doing a little revisit of some of M. Night Shyamalan's movies and
Mhm.
having that be like a pod episode would be kind of fun. Because
Yeah,
there's
because they're
some that
very divisive.
I know, and there's some that I've seen and others that I haven't seen at all, or it's just been a long time.
I know, I gotta say, my favorite one is probably The Visit, and I know that people don't like that one. But I
I watched
remember
about half of that and I was intrigued.
I understand people don't like that one, but I really like that one, and I've seen it a few times, and every time I like it. And, like, I remember The Lady in the Water, I remember gosh, I must have been in literally I don't even know if I would have been in high school, but my me and my stepsister was like, "We've gotta see this movie."
Yeah, I
For
have it
what?
pulled up. It came out in '06, so that would have been right
Dang.
before we came into high school, yeah.
High school, yeah, well, I saw that one. But, yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, I definitely wanted to watch Trap, but I didn't get to it.
No, I
So,
just saw it
maybe
came
next
out
week we'll talk
today.
about Trap.
Yeah. I also I don't know, I think I've just been, like, under a rock or whatever, but I was watching M. Night Shyamalan, he was doing his, like, you know, look back on his films. I didn't realize that he did The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
see, that's the thing about him is he has, like, amazing? No. Like, it's just like and I feel like most people probably feel mostly no.
Yeah,
But it's just like he always says to have those, like, twists, which works perfectly in The Sixth Sense, but then when you're
well,
expecting them
yeah,
all the time,
exactly,
it kinda makes it yeah, I think
exactly.
I had watched Old recently, or I guess last year sometime,
Yeah, that one's on Peacock right
The
now, I guess.
Village.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it. So I just thought, yeah, that would be fun to kind of go through. And if I know some of them, like, I don't really want to pay for like five of his movies, but some that are
Right.
easy for us to watch, like, that would be kind of fun to just visit those again and go through a little bit of his career.
Mhm.
He's just an interesting character. And actually, listening to that interview with him was really interesting too, because he even said, I know that there's talk about, like, surrounding me about my movies not really being, like, some not being super successful, but, like, I just believe in them and I go through it, like, one piece at a time and try to make, like, little bits better. Or, he just, like, he's not going to just throw what he wants to do away. And sometimes you come up with these ideas that are a little off the wall, but, like, you try them. And I think like what we talked about with Mickey 17 last week too, I would rather see a movie that is kind of more unique and see it not do as well than see a movie that's been done a million times and have it be successful. But I think you're right with him, even though the ideas of his movies are usually different, when we know that there's going to be a major twist in the last 25 minutes, you're just waiting for that the whole time.
I know. You're like, "Oh, is this gonna be supernatural? Is this not?" And I
Mhm.
think just like that living up to, like people still talk about The Sixth Sense in like such a huge respected regards. And then to have to like and that being earlier in your career and then having to live up to that
You're constantly
pressure.
chasing it.
Yeah, it's like there's literally no winning where it's like even if a movie's like okay, but if it's not, this amazing movie, people are gonna just I don't know, not wanna accept it from you or
Yeah,
something.
they just always expect better, more.
What was the movie his daughter just did?
That wasn't that one with Dakota Fanning? Wasn't that The Watchers?
Let me see.
I'm looking that up.
Stand by.
Who's gonna get to it first? Yep, it was The Watchers.
The Watchers. Was that the only one she did?
Um, Looks like it's not coming up immediately. Movies. Yeah, that's the only one.
That was the only one, okay.
It was,
But,
and like I said with that movie, like I watched it on a plane, which that's not always the best place to really like get fully engrossed in the
immersed,
film.
yeah.
Yeah, but it just it just felt like not fully developed, and
Yeah.
again, the same as, like, her father, there's that twist at the end where you're like, "Oh, okay, so we're doing this again." Like, I
Mhm,
could have I think it could have been a stronger movie had there not been like, because it was kind of about like this, the folklore in Ireland and all these things. And I think they could have just fully leaned into that more from the beginning and not had it had this major twist in the third act that would have made it more compelling.
I know, and I think what's tricky about his movies too is that a lot of them have, like, that paranormal type twist like
Mhm.
that, and it's kinda like you have to just be okay with that and take yourself out of the reality of
Yeah,
something being able to happen, and I do think that's another tricky part of, like, his movie or, like, her doing that as well.
well, that's where with some of the like horror movies or paranormal things, I think like what makes if you're not going to do like the big twist like that, or rely on just like a million jump scares through the whole thing, like you have to almost have that mystery through
Mhm,
the majority of the movie and then have things be revealed at the end where it's not necessarily a twist. It's just that we've
mhm,
been building, building, building towards this the whole time. And then it all comes together and it's just revealed at the end. And
mhm.
like, because just when I don't know, you see it a lot. I mean, it's not just with M. Night Shyamalan, but you see that a lot where it's like, oh, they had us thinking it was this way the whole time. And then all of a sudden they flipped the script. Like, I mean, sometimes that works well, but other times it's too played out.
Mhm. I know that's definitely a tricky tricky thing to do.
Not
But
that
it's like
we're
you're trying to be
screenwriters.
right. Right. But then it's like it's because they're trying so hard to be different and surprise the audience and be creative that it almost isn't creative anymore.
I
It's such a
know.
weird like some people they really nail it and then some people just or sometimes it just doesn't fully work.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Where that's where I thought that Long Legs, while I thought that film was very strange, it was interesting how we didn't really see much of his face for a long time.
Mhm.
And then he was kind of revealed, and we still never even really understood, like, why does he look like this? Like, we
Right.
never got that. But then it was strange because it's like that ended up not even being a plot point, really.
No,
Like,
other than to I know, and then, yeah, we're, like, building up to seeing his face, but then we never get any clarity about why,
yeah, why is this face even different? So
right?
that,
Why
I
does he
mean,
look like this?
yeah, there's definitely a lot of other things in that movie that we we could,
Or complicated?
yeah. But yeah, that's just kind of an example of one where they did. I thought that it was going in the right direction, and then it ended up veering off a little bit towards the end. But
Mm.
um, anyway, yeah, we'll have to watch The Trap.
Yeah, I was like I said, I meant to. I'm curious about it, especially just coming off a Smile too, and them kinda not having the same exact thing, but just kinda like this big movie like
Yeah.
that, so it'll be interesting to see how they compare.
Hmm.
I did see that Emma Chamberlain is gonna be in a movie, so we've got another influencer
Good.
on her way. But sometimes when they have those like influencers and they make that huge deal about it, and then they have make them do all this press, and then they're in it for like 10 minutes, like they're the first kill or something.
I know.
But
Emma
it's supposed to be.
Chamberlain.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I was
Uh,
just gonna say it's supposed to be a horror movie. It actually sounds kind of interesting, and like Victoria Pedretti and Lily Reinhart are also gonna be in it. But anyway.
I think she is an interesting case study just with her background, obviously. And, I mean, we've seen her do interviews on the red carpet. We've seen her in ads for, designer brands.
Louis
And
Vuitton.
yeah, and I guess I don't really know, like, she's that typical influencer where I have absolutely no idea where her career is going. They're just trying to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, or also make as much money as they possibly can in the shortest amount of time. Like, that's just what I feel with all these influencers.
Hmm. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how she does. And like we said, she could be first kill and like
Yeah, she's just
hardly
there
see
for
her.
bait.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't really get a chance to watch anything else of note. Like, I was trying just over the weekend, like, to decompress. I was just trying to catch up on like some lighthearted summer house stuff, but like I didn't watch anything worth talking about besides those two movies.
Hmm. Yeah, that was pretty much the main things I watched too.
Hmm. And then I was trying to think. I don't think there was really much. Uh, like celeb news this week either.
Mm-mm.
I did see one thing where I don't know if this is true, but um, it said that Haley Bieber might be trying to take some legal action against some of the people that are just massive haters online. And you know
Hmm.
what? I hope that she does, because she just gets put through the ringer. Anything that she posts, the comments are horrible. Like, and it's not just her that experiences that, but I think that there needs to be some type of precedent for things like this. Like,
Well, it was even brought up in the Blake Lively thing. They're like, this is what I want. This is the level of media scrutiny I want Blake to end up getting, which
yeah,
I mean, for people to be like, yeah, this is how we have to specifically take down somebody else is the way Hailey Bieber is treated in the
Yeah.
media. It's just kind of, I don't know what it is. And it does have me questioning if somebody is behind bots again and like
Me
who is
too.
behind this. And then it's like people are kind of like what we saw with the Blake Lively thing too, where it was like they are ready to jump and pounce on this.
I know. The thing that gets me with Hailey Bieber stuff is just nobody seems to care. Like even when I saw that article, and I think it might have been like a TMZ thing, but the comments, like there were a few that were like, "You go, girl!" Like, yeah, it's about time. Like people are ridiculous, but the majority of them were like, "LOL!" Like you deserve this, like just so negative, and I'm just like, where does this even come from? Like, I don't understand why
Her
people hate
social
her so
relationship
much.
with Justin
Yeah,
Bieber.
I mean, it's
Like
just crazy.
I know because I feel like nobody would be good enough for him in like the
Mhm.
fans' eyes.
Yeah, I agree. And it doesn't help that she's obviously stunningly beautiful. Like that doesn't
The
add
perfect
any
skin.
points. Yeah, but if she does actually do that, if that's for real, I would just be really interested to see what ends up coming of that, because there's a lot of people that would benefit from something changing. And I know that online they say, oh, well, we have community guidelines and we have this and that. But like we've posted something before that wasn't even offensive or anything in the slightest. And it's been flagged for community guidelines. And then we've also reported some people's comments, and they're like, oh, we looked at it and it's fine. It's like, no, it's
Mhm.
actually really hateful and disgusting.
I know, I remember specifically. I believe it was Hailey Bieber's like flagging a bunch of comments under
Yeah,
something because I'm like, this is ridiculous. And, it's like that probably didn't change anything, but it just, I don't know. It is just so strange. Or like, how can somebody like that's actually terrible? It's like we don't know how terrible Hailey Bieber is in general, but these people who are just absolutely horrible people who have like charges pressed against them are
yeah,
not getting this level of hate
I
on
know.
their stuff. So it's just really
It does
interesting.
make sense. Yeah, it does make sense. I don't even know why celebrities have their comments turned on, quite
I
frankly.
know for money, I don't know if engagement or something, but I
Yeah,
wouldn't. I'd have
probably.
those things. I just wouldn't even have social media. You can't tweet anything. You can't
No. I would all
post
I would do,
anything.
I mean, because if you're an actress, then studios want you to have a following and want you to promote and stuff. I would literally just be like, here's an extra phone. I'm hiring you to do all my social media content. I want absolutely no part of it. You can tell me what type of stuff you want to shoot or whatever, but like I will never ask about how the page is going. I don't want to see
Right.
it. Like, no.
That's honestly the only way to do it at this point. But then some of these people have businesses that they're just constantly promoting and need that engagement. But man, it just doesn't even feel worth it.
No, it
Seems
really
like you should
doesn't.
just have that business's Instagram and that's it.
That's it. I know. I know. But yeah, I don't think there was any. Oh, did you see where Gwyneth Paltrow was talking about that new movie that she's going to be in with Timothy Chalamet? And I can't remember the name of it, but the two of them are lovers in the
Oh
film.
my.
I know. And first of all, we haven't really seen Gwyneth in a little bit.
Thanks. No, she's
I don't
been
think.
girl bossing it up with Goop.
I know. But she had said that they hadn't. I couldn't really understand. I think this is from an interview, but it was just like clipped out, and this one part was put in. So I couldn't understand if they ended up using the intimacy coordinator or not using the intimacy coordinator. But she was like, I didn't even, know that these existed. Like, I'm from a time where you were just told what to do and how to move, and then they had the cameras roll on you. There wasn't anything more than that. But she was kind of saying too how having that person be really involved kind of took you out of the moment as the
Moment. Yeah.
character. And I think what she was trying to say was that they told her to like just take a step back, like, get you can make sure that everybody feels safe and stuff, but after that, kind of take the back seat and let us just do what comes
So
naturally.
it is interesting to hear different people talk about intimacy coordinators and how some people don't like them, some people do. They feel safer with them,
Mhm.
and it's just really interesting. I want to be an intimacy coordinator.
I don't know if I want to be one.
Like, get to be with like up front and with the
Yeah, you have
celebs.
to
Like,
be
oh,
you'd
I don't
get right up close and personal with their
know.
very private areas, that's for sure.
I know. I personally think, whether they're like super involved and like guiding you and stuff, but it is nice to have somebody that's there for like accountability, like
Yeah,
somebody that's
I
getting
agree.
paid to be there for accountability so nobody's taken advantage of or being pushed too far. So I think the concept of them is really cool, but it is interesting, like I said, just to see everybody's different opinion on it
Yeah,
from the
I
working actors.
Yeah, I agree that you need an outside person to be there to make sure that things are happening above board and stuff like that. But
Mm,
I can see where you're already getting so much direction from the director themselves, and there's already like, I know usually when they do more intimate scenes, they have more of a closed set, so it's only the people who really need to be there are there, but we're still talking like 10 people in there potentially to watch this happen. And then if the intimacy coordinator is giving you direction on top of that, it is going to take you out of the moment, and it's not going to feel as real as it might need to on screen. And
mhm,
it might honestly hurt your, well, not hurt, but maybe hinder the chemistry with your on-screen partner too.
mhm. Yeah, I could see it going either way. It's really interesting. I guess maybe like what the didn't they say in Anora they did not use the intimacy
I think
coordinators?
so, yeah.
Which again is very interesting. I don't know.
I I
Like,
know, and not to jump into, Anora again and getting a little too detailed with this stuff, but some of those intimate scenes, I was like, "How do you even film this?"
I know, like, what is covering those
Yes.
areas
Right. Like,
to
how are they
stop
not
so
actually
it's
having sex right now? Like, I couldn't wrap my
right.
mind around it.
I know.
It just
I know, it's
seemed,
almost like just it's weird because it's like you just know they aren't, but yet it looks like it
yeah,
still.
I know. It's just very, I guess it's believable, I don't know. But yeah, it's just interesting. I think with the Gwyneth and Timothy thing too, because there's such an age difference between them,
Mm,
like having an intimacy coordinator on hand probably is the smart thing to do as well, just because you could potentially be setting yourself up for disaster.
right.
But it was just kind of funny to hear Gwyneth Paltrow be like, we never used intimacy coordinator.
We just won it.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I don't think I had any other news, did you?
No.
Well, do you want to get into recommendations?
Sure.
I wanted to, because we haven't really talked about it, and I'm almost finished with the book. I wanted to just plug and recommend JoJo's book, Over the Influence, because I think you already finished it, didn't you?
Mhm.
So we'll be ready to talk about that next week for the
Mhm.
pod. So if anybody out there is finishing up that book, do that so that you're ready to go for next week's episode and can give your input on, what you thought. That would be great. So I'm just going to recommend that, even though it's not my favorite right now. That's all I'll say.
About a C, maybe about a C.
Yeah,
Great.
a mid grade. Yeah.
I'll just recommend that too then, so we're ready for next week.
Yeah, ready to go. Um, I also, we last week we teased a little bit about a rebrand for the pod. So the last episode and then this one as well, we've kind of changed the vibe a little bit. We aren't fully diving into our rebrand yet, but if you've listened this far, we would love your feedback. Like, do you like us talking more about movies and different, and
Or
more
like
just like
media.
yeah, media and the industry, and are there any movies that you would want us to watch and talk about? Like, we're kind of moving in that direction. We think it's kind of been a natural progression.
Mhm.
So we would just love some feedback. That would be great. If you've listened this far, please just give us a little bit of feedback, and that would really help us. Um, yeah, but we obviously appreciate you for listening. Don't forget to check out our socials. We still are running into some technology issues, so hopefully soon we can get that resolved. But when we're virtual, you'll always have a video up, so that's great.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.